Hi, and welcome to Rec Chat, where students and professionals talk all things collegiate recreation. I'm your host, Earl Cabellin from the University of Maryland, College Park. Thank you for joining us today, either live or via our archived YouTube channel. Joining me behind the scenes is our amazing Rec Chat team of Rochelle Harvey from Western Washington University, Max Miller from Swarthmore College, and Zach Watson from the University of New Hampshire. We're excited to have two outstanding members of our strategic planning team with us today to talk about the new NIRSA Strategic Plan. They'll share some of the foundational work that has been done and what the planning team has ahead. For those of you who are following us on Twitter, we'll be asking some questions using the @RecChat hashtag regarding the strategic plan. So be on the lookout for some of those scanning questions. We'd love to hear from you and hear what your thoughts are on those questions. Before we introduce our panelists, we wanted to share our gratitude with our friends over at Corvallis, Oregon at NIRSA HQ for all of their support in helping RecChat do what it does. If you haven't followed them already, NIRSA is on Twitter, and you can follow them at @NIRSA Live. Just another housekeeping item, our November Rec Chat will be another YouTube live conversation with members of the Small Programs Advisory Council. So if you're a small program within our association looking for ideas, this is probably a good Rec Chat to tune into. So, and now, without further ado, I would like to introduce our panelists and allow them to introduce themselves. And so we'll start off with Leah. So Leah, if you can give us your position, institution, and who is your favorite superhero?
Hi, I'm Leah Dorothy. I'm the director at Oregon State University, and I'm currently the president-elect of NIRSA. And my favorite superhero before the latest movie was Wonder Woman, and still is. Thanks.
Great. Don.
Hi, everybody. My name is Don Stenta. I'm the Director of Recreational Sports with Student Life at The Ohio State University. And I would say I'm old school enough to remember reruns of the Batman TV series. And so there was just something really cheesy about that show that I loved. And Batman has always kind of been my favorite superhero.
Great. Well, we're very happy to have you on with us this afternoon. And so let's just get into some of our questions that we have for you. And so first, can you tell us a little bit, tell us about some of the background of the new strategic plan? How was it formed, and who's on the work team, and how did you go about selecting that work team?
Okay, well, I'll start. So the strategic plan is based on the really strong current strategic plan that exists. And it is based on the 4 goals that are existing: diverse membership, leading authority and health inclusiveness and community, professional development, and of course our foundation and NSC. So from that, we are building on that strong base to move forward. The team was put together by Don and myself, Pam Watts and Aaron Sullivan at HQ. And Don, do you want to share a little bit about the team? And I can list them after.
Sure. So what we wanted to try to focus on was getting diverse representation across the entire association. So that meant folks who are newer in the profession, folks who have been in our profession for a long period of time, who serve in those seasoned professional roles. We wanted to make sure that we got perspectives from different institutional type. We wanted to make sure that people understood that they would be serving on behalf of the association and as advocates for various constituency groups. So that was something that was really important to us. We wanted to make sure that people were very creative and energetic and passionate about our field, and that they would be able to understand that the strategic plan that we're focused on right now is, like Leah said, building on our current plan and taking us into the future. So we didn't want to have an attitude on the team of people who said, the current plan is done, it's out of here, and we're going to start from scratch, because we're definitely not doing that. But we also want to make sure that we're very bold about how we keep saying peer around the corner to take a look at what lies ahead. And I think that as Leah lists the team, you'll see that our group is very representative of our association. and full of really dynamic leaders.
Great, thanks. And we definitely consulted across the organization and got this amazing team together. So on our team are Victoria Lopez Herrera, Pam Sue, Earl Cabellin, right there with you, Kara McFadden, Kevin Marbury, Siobhan Shorter, and Pam Watts, and Erin O'Sullivan. And Don and I are co-chairs of the strategic plan as we're moving forward. The plan itself, we are being innovative and going on a learning journey with this plan. We are searching out all different parts of the organization, as well as those that we work with external to the association as well too. And an important part of the build of this group and the build of this part of the plan is our strategic partners. So many of you listening may actually be on strategic partners, and we have reached out within the organization and created many different groups that can put a different lens on the different questions that are posed to you here today, or posed within different parts of what we're doing as a survey and different organizations or throughout the organization.
Great. Thank you for that feedback. It sounds like a lot of intentionality went into the selection process of the committee members. And so I know that's something that the membership really appreciates. So thank you for that. Let's move into our next question about, what's different about this iteration of the strategic plan. And I know that many folks are familiar with the 2013 and 2018 plan, but Leah and Don, can you share with us just some of the differences you see with this iteration?
I think one of the things with this iteration is that we have our values are real, our NIRSA strategic values are really strong, and we're basing that on those values as well. So we feel that this time in building it, because the base is so strong, we're able to seek out new information and talk about what is around the corner, as Don had talked about. Don, do you want to add that?
Yeah, I think folks need to keep in mind that the current plan that we're in right now came out of a number of years of governance transition and many conversations leading up to creating a new governance for our association. So what we take for granted today around the 6 strategic values, they seem to me very embedded in our association. But 5, 6, 7 years ago, that was very bold. It was very bold to kind of say, we're gonna stay focused as an association on an association that leads based on our strategic values, not on the whims or the aspirations of the elected leaders or other folks within the association. To me, having been involved with other national associations in higher education, to me that's the key distinguishing factor of NIRSA, is that we believe and we are focused on strategic values to move our association forward. And I'm very proud of the fact that the values that we have developed are extremely well embedded into the association. You see them come alive and assert themselves in the curriculum of our annual conference, across other institutes and other activities that take place within the association. That's a sign of a very strong association, one that's values based. And so I think what's different about this iteration is that we get the opportunity to sort of build on the very strong values as our foundation. And we also think about this idea of what does lie ahead, to me, as it relates to looking at partnerships in higher education and beyond. The thing that I'm really excited about in the conversations that we've been having is that we're being intentional, talking with folks who are part of CHEMA, which is the Council for Higher Ed Management Association. So CHEMA brings together the folks who, the professional associations, with folks who work in residence life and housing and in unions and student activities, Greek life and beyond. And what that does is it allows us to partner with our folks in higher education about what rec sports, what collegiate recreation, what campus recreation needs to be thinking about into the future. I also think that we will have opportunities to look at other partners who are involved in our industry of physical activity and well-being and wellness and health, maybe not in the higher education world. And so being able to touch base with those folks and have conversations with professionals who do similar work with us, but maybe are in a different sector of our industry, provides us with an opportunity to look ahead as well.
We'll also be looking at the members and with them, really good feedback from them as well on what they see next in the industry for them that may also impact what we do within our profession. And I think the strong focus, as Don alluded to, based on our values, is that because that's strong and because our membership is strong, I think this gives us an opportunity to look at how we advance the profession and what does that mean in higher education, tying into Don's comments as well. And how do we best position all the professionals and students that are part of NIRSA to become better and to be able to be the best they can be on their campuses as well.
Okay, great. And Leah and Don, just to be clear, because I know we've heard this from other of our colleagues, but in terms of the strategic plan, NIRSA is not looking to change its mission statement or anything like that. Is that correct?
No, we're not. That is part of, as Don said, that because we are a strong organization and our values align with the work we're doing, that we are just looking at what's next and how do we take us to the next step for NIRSA beyond 2018.
Great, thank you. Okay, let's go into our third question, and that is, how does this strategic plan impact the work we do in collegiate recreation?
I can get us started on that. My assessment is that NIRSA is comprised of people who have a very high dose of humility. We tend to be people who work really hard. We have great innovative ideas that we implement in our departments, and sometimes we share those ideas and we brag a little bit, if you will, about what we're doing. Most of the time we're working hard and we're not doing like a massive scan of how we sort of insert ourselves into our higher education environments. And I would love for us to think about the way that we impact collegiate recreation and higher education with some of the initiatives that will come out of the strategic plan. I think that we should be a lot more bold in what we have to offer around student development. And there's a tendency in collegiate recreation with professionals to associate student development mainly with the professional development of our students. So I think we do a really good job of cultivating professionals for our profession. We do a really good job of teaching our student employees to have great work ethic and to understand the transferability of their work. But we're not necessarily aligning the student development theories about how students learn and how they mature and how they create a sense of their own identity in with the work that happens in collegiate recreation. So I think a strategic plan can provide a more effective alignment with where we want to sort of lay claim to the impact that we have on student learning on campus. One of the things I do at Ohio State is I talk with our staff here to make sure that everybody understands that primarily we are here in the business of education. Our number one goal is to serve as an educator, and then the vehicle that we do that through is through collegiate recreation. But all of us have to say we're here to support and enhance student learning. There's no accident about what we do, and we need to really talk with academic partners on campus about being very closely aligned with the academic mission of the institution. That's what distinguishes collegiate recreation professionals from someone who might work in the private sector or someone who might work in community recreation. And to me, I find that to be really exciting because we can align the work that we do with the significance of learning. So the strategic plan ought to talk about that in terms of how we frame aspects of student learning, leadership development, diversity and inclusion, health and well-being, looking at kind of advancing our association values to make sure that there's this direct connection between collegiate recreation and higher education around student learning.
And I think another component of that, Don touched on a little bit, is the well-being. And I think integrated well-being, as we know on our campuses, is becoming more and more prominent. And many campuses are integrating both the wellness and the campus recreation or the collegiate recreation together. So for us, as well as we go on this journey to learn about what's next for NIRSA, I think that is something very important that we should be observing, learning about, hearing what's happening within other organizations that also address the well-being of students, and then how can we best prepare our professionals and our students to deliver the integrated well-being. And from a NIRSA perspective, you know, how do we become the prominent authority in that within the industry?
Okay, great. So we are going to pause for a moment, and we are going to go to the Twitterverse of Twitter and kind of do a quick check-in and see what we got. So I'm going to turn it over to Max.
All right, so we'd like to thank Mark, Greg, and Aaron for checking in. Also see that Scott Flickinger is out there following along with us. Some great thoughts by all through following along with the Rec Chat hashtag. Some questions will come a little later through our discussion, and we do appreciate you all checking in and want to thank you very much for participating.
Great. Well, thank you, Max. And so we're going to go into our fourth question. And for those of you NIRSA members who read the NIRSA Know, you've seen a lot of good articles about the work the strategic plan has been doing, specifically, most recently, their work in Seattle. And so, Don and Leah, if you could share a little bit about what that meeting was like in Seattle with the group, what exactly was done there, and what the committee kind of did to prepare to think strategically and have that mindset.
Okay, I can start. So in order to prepare, we asked our committee to the task force to think differently, to start thinking about how we would approach kind of a learning design model to see what we could build and to come in with that open mind to build through that. So Don and I did some work with the team early on at our time in Seattle to help us as a group come together. We're a group that haven't all worked together before, or even some of us hadn't even met before. So the exciting part of this is that we had this team come together, and we had this opportunity to build a very unique opportunity for us to bring all the different lenses and all the different experiences to the table and to learn from each other. So I think that was the first part of what we did to build as a team. And Don, you want to jump into what's next?
Yeah, so to me, what's important is that we don't all assume that people have experience or like to do or are engaged in a strategic planning process. It's something that I love thinking about. And then there are sometimes people think that strategic planning isn't doing anything, it's just thinking. So when I was able to work with the NIRSA Assembly, we talked a lot about the idea that thinking is doing. So there's actually a really important dynamic and dimension of leadership that should encourage all of us to learn the capacity for being a strategic thinker. So we were able to draw from articles and readings from Inside Higher Education and from the Harvard Business Review. We even included a NASPA article from the Leadership Exchange that focused on the mega trends for creating leaders in student affairs. The other articles focused on things like how to rethink college strategic planning. So it was situated in our industry of higher education. And we had some really good discussions about what the trends are in higher education today, what we need to be thinking about in terms of the roles that we as leaders have in shaping those trends, and then how can we use this information to our advantage in terms of the way that we put together a strategic planning process. So there was a pretty nice balance between the two days or 2.5 days that we were there, between some NIRSA collegial led discussions where NIRSA staff and Leah and myself led some discussions. And then we also had a facilitator come in to talk us through the strategic planning process. And in this series of activities, we thought about sort of the brand of NIRSA and the customer base of NIRSA, and did kind of a nice overlay of public and private and higher education sector examination of our association and the strategic values that we have. And I think we got off to a really good start in making sure that we were thinking broadly, but staying focused all at the same time. One of the articles, the recommendation is that typically with strategic planning, we focus way too broadly, and there's a danger of doing too much. And so we want to stay focused as possible, while at the same time being creative. So there were some really good conversations about trying to ensure ways for us to do that.
I think Don made me think that within the article in the NIRSA Know, I believe there's a live link to the design thinking, to one of the short little TED Talks that we use. And I think those listening, if you want to jump in and go look at it later, I think it's a really good opportunity to see that what we're doing with the build of the strategic plan is that we are going out and asking a lot of questions before we actually start honing in on themes and focusing. A big part of that day, the first day too, that Don had alluded to, is we looked at the environmental scans from the strategic partner groups. Yeah. And that was a really interesting conversation in the sense that you could see all the different perspectives that have been brought to the table through all the different questions that were asked through the strategic partners. And the strategic partner groups are also listed in the NIRSA Know article as well, so you can take a look at how broad that was. That really set us up well to work with the facilitator the second day. And I would say, I think Don agreed that it was a deep dive, and the team came together and really dove quickly into the work and into the thinking, as Don had talked about. It really structured us well to really hear what the facilitator had to say so that we are taking a look at all different aspects and not trying to be everything, but at the same time understanding we needed to know what people were saying and thinking within our organization. So it was exciting, and I think one of our highlights was going to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and being inspired by some of the work that we saw that they do, and coming together after that. I think it really did inspire us to move forward.
Yeah, you know, when you come across something new, all of a sudden it's like I see and hear this everywhere I turn. And that design thinking TED Talk that Leah found and that she mentioned is one that I would definitely encourage you to take a look at if this is something you're interested in. Because I think just about every third or fourth day in my work here, I've come across something or someone talking about design thinking. And it really is this emerging notion that we can be much more intentional in the way that we think about what we're doing, and to challenge us to process things in a different way that can help elevate how thinking can impact our organization. So I think it really did set us up for some really great conversations. And the other thing that was very important is that there has been a significant amount of intentionality in getting both strategic partners and accountability partners on board so that we get fantastic representation across the association. And the environmental scans were very, very informative, and it was interesting to see, like Leah said, where these different groups sort of fell in terms of consistency, and then there were some aspects that kind of came forward, like, oh yeah, we have to keep that in mind as well.
And I'll just, the accountability partners that Don mentioned, I forgot to mention at the beginning. So those are the groups within our organization, our association, that will be responsible for delivering and executing the strategic plan. So those are the NIRSA board, the NIRSA Foundation, the NSC board, member network, and HQ. So those accountability partners are helping us check in and know where we are, like what they think about our role and how we're, the ownership, the engagement. They're going to be the ambassadors of our plan. So they're an important part of the scan as well. And so it's interesting to ask questions across all of these different groups and like Don said, get the varying answers to help us start understanding what is it that, is NIRSA's brand promise that we're going to deliver forward.
Great. Thank you so much. And, you talked about the those groups and those leadership groups that you guys are talking to as well. And I know Max here on RecChat is part of the 0 to 10 year professional group that I led, and so it was nice to have Max and get his input on a lot of the questions that were thrown out here on Twitter that you're all seeing right now. So definitely sounds like a more collective information gathering as we kind of usher in this new strategic plan, which is pretty awesome.
Well, I'll jump in, Earl, and let you know that we're not done with seeking information yet. As this moves forward in our timeline, one of the next big things that members will see is actually a member survey across the entire organization. And this survey will come to you through a partner that's helping us externally to administer it. But it's an opportunity for every member of the association to provide input and answer some of the questions that we have put out there to the organization and to the different strategic partner groups. So look for that probably mid-November at the latest. It should be coming into your inbox, and we would love all the feedback that we can. And we're also getting feedback at regional conferences as well. And there's opportunities to answer the questions. And it's great to see in some of the Twitter responses coming in, we're also getting answers and feedback to the questions you were posted on Twitter. So we'll definitely be using that as well.
Okay. Max, speaking of, is there anything on Twitter that's worth mentioning? You might want to unmute yourself.
Yes, there we go. Unmute yourself when talking. Dana from UNC Pembroke, we posted the question, what's the secret sauce that just separates campus recreation from everybody? And she said it's that most campus rec departments have this all-in mentality and truly embody that team and family attitude when working with students, putting on programs for the community. It's just a great holistic approach to making sure that everybody's working together to get the most out of the programming.
Great, thank you, Dana, for tweeting in that response. And as I'm looking over here at my Twitter feed, shout out to Aaron Mertz, who's pretty active right now in the conversation. So thank you. And we did see your question, and we'll kind of tie that in at the end of the show. So hang tight for that answer to your question. But thank you again, everyone who's participating currently. So let's get into our next question for Don and Leah. And can you share with us just some of the themes that that have been emerging through this process, and things that you've kind of gathered, and the direction of the association? So what have you kind of gleaned from the stuff that you've been doing so far?
Well, I'll comment first that Dana's comment is a theme that we're seeing. That sense of family is definitely a strong theme within NIRSA, and it was fun to see it come through in many different ways within all the different strategic partner groups.
I think that there's definitely a desire to be more bold in integrating health and well-being into our programs and services in our facilities. I think that for the most part, we own physical well-being in terms of what we currently offer in most recreational sports programs, and that there's a lot of work that can be done to extend our thoughts around supporting the holistic development of students, and making sure that we design our programs and facilitate what we do to support the whole student and the whole person. So that's definitely something that's coming through. It's very clear that in this idea of we're all in this together mentality that Dana references, serving on a team and being a part of a team and a group that is focused is a really important dimension of leadership. And so there's definitely going to continue to be, I think, a thread related to leadership development. And I think in the we're all in this together mentality, we have some more ground that we could claim around diversity and inclusion. I think we could be more significant and more bold in how we assert our leadership in helping advance a diversity and inclusion agenda on college campuses. We do that really well. I think that we just need to be more intentional, more more clear about what students are learning in an intramural activity or what they might experience in an outdoor adventure setting helps them create a sense of community and a sense of connection with other folks. And hopefully we can be more intentional, making sure that the diversity of those experiences shines through, and that we allow students to sort of reflect on and process those experiences in their own development.
I think also then just the themes strongly tie back to the values, and I know we've mentioned the strategic values of NIRSA quite a bit, but they really tie back, and it's exciting to see our members so strong in their thinking. There's a lot of comments about what is important to them personally, as well as what they believe that their peers value. In our association, I believe, I think I have the stat right, 50% of our members have been members of the organization 10 years or less. So we really, as a strategic plan, really need to focus on what do we need for that large group of professionals in our organization to help them move forward as their profession on their campuses, or as Don talked about, in higher education as well too. And how do we support that? What is that going to look like? We're hoping that the direction and the vision comes out of this plan so that we can build that as an organization.
Great. All right, so this next question, I think we might have addressed it, but we'll ask it anyways. And that's what's next for the strategic plan. And then I think you talked a little bit about how NIRSA members can become involved, but if you just want to briefly touch upon the what's next.
Okay, so our timeline is very aggressive and very, we're aiming to be ready to present a draft at the annual conference in March. So this team, this task force is doing a lot of work this fall. As you said, all the environmental scanning, the member survey, I don't know if I could say that enough, make sure you do that. And we are gonna come back together as a group in December and work through with our consultant to work through, and hopefully we will have a draft ready for the board of directors and ready for the membership to take a look at in March.
I would just put in another plug for the survey. I know a lot of times people feel like surveys come and go, and what I say isn't going to really matter. It is a key way for folks to be involved in the strategic planning process. I think that's an incredible opportunity. I think if you have the opportunity to attend a session at a regional meeting or a state workshop, and then certainly at the annual conference, but along the way there'll be regular updates, and if you can't attend or aren't able to attend meetings in person, then please make sure that folks at headquarters, Leah or myself, know what's on your mind, because we will always be willing to take feedback and bring that forward to the planning team.
And I'm just going to jump on the survey, and I know we keep saying that over and over, but that survey was built by members of this organization. So we surveyed members who are not involved with this on a strategic partners group, not involved on an accountability partner group, and not on the task force. We asked them to answer, we provided a large document where they provided information about what they thought needed to be asked of the members. And in true NIRSA fashion, I believe we surveyed 26 people and 22 people responded. So for those of you that do research, that's a good return rate. And the exciting part is the questions that you're being asked on that survey are coming to you from other members, so that we are really focusing in on what's important to our organization.
Wow, that's all great stuff, and we're truly excited to see what's next and get all this great feedback from our members. And so, Leah and Don, is there anything else you want to add that you think maybe kind of important for people who are watching right now? Maybe students, maybe that 0 to 10 professionals that you said make up our association a lot. Is there anything you would like to add that will kind of inspire them to, fill out that survey and let your voice be heard, or attend the regional conference session? So anything you want to add?
I would just say this is all part of being a professional and becoming a professional, being engaged If you have the ability to serve your professional association, that's an incredible way for you to contribute to our profession. And we do these plans to last 5 or so years, so they don't happen all the time. So when you have an opportunity to get engaged, it really is important to make sure that your voice is heard. And you'll have the opportunity to make an impact in our profession. So that's a big deal to me. I think it's really important that we encourage this. And we want to put together a really strong plan with diverse opinions and viewpoints. So please make sure that you're involved.
Great. And I'll jump in there with Don that yes, the involvement and professional development is a big part of this. Erin asked a really great question on Twitter. She asked, like, what's your brand promise? And I think this actually might really tie well with the survey. And a brand promise is like what you promise and are going to be held accountable to. And the best example I can give you is actually Southwest Airlines, right? So they are low fares, lots of flights, and fun. Those are their 3 brand promises. So if you start thinking about that in the scope of NIRSA, what do you want NIRSA's brand promise to be? What do you want us to be as an organization to be held accountable for each other to deliver to our students, our members, and to the profession of collegiate recreation? So I think that's an opportunity for you to engage and be a part of that process.
Okay, great. And to go back to Aaron Mertz's question, and Leah, I don't know if you're willing to chime in on this, or if we punt it to the board, but she asked, how will you share the results and progress of the 2013-2018 strategic plan? So I'm assuming she's meaning the current one that we're in right now. And so Leah or Don, do you have any insight on that, or is that something that you're aware of?
I think Don and I can both respond because Don's experience on the board and my new recent experience on the board is that there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes on metrics and accountability, but it's a great question on how we might present that. So I'm definitely willing to bring that question to the board and to HQ to move that forward. Don, from your perspective on the board work that you've been at the last 2 years?
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely a scorecard that's used that takes all of the different initiatives within the strategic values, and it's pages and pages in length, because each value, health and well-being represents a massive effort across the association, as does all of the strategic values. Plus, there's a whole dimension of other activities that take place. So the scorecard keeps the board and the staff accountable to how things are coming along. And those things are reviewed on a very regular basis. But I think that's a great question, and I think Leah can represent us on the board in terms of saying that this was a question that was raised, and is there a progress report, an indicator, some sort of spot on the website where people can see what kind of progress is being made. The one thing I truly value about our association is the level of transparency that's there. So I think that without adding, tons more work to our staff, but there are definitely possibilities to make sure that people know what progress is being made. You can also see a lot of the strategic values progress coming forward in the various tools that are shared on the NIRSA website, where there's lots of stuff in the communities where you can actually get resources. So like I co-chaired the leadership commission a few years ago, and there are resources now available for folks to see what kind of initiatives can be implemented in your departments. So I think that the website always becomes a really good place for great resources.
Great, thank you. So Max, I'm going to punt it over to you if you want to give a quick shout out to our friend on Twitter.
Shout out to Bobby Lambert, or Lambier, depending on where you're from. He's coming to us from Alberta, Calgary. And he works in residence life, so shout out to MRU for spreading the love of NIRSA and Rec Chat across the campus to our friends in residence life.
Woohoo! Thanks, Bobby, for participating today. All right, any final thoughts, Leah, Don, before we kind of wrap up?
Well, I just want to say maybe Don and I here today, but really it's the task force, well, and Earl, it's the task force team that is really advancing this work. And I would say that our learning journey is exciting, and we are looking forward to what we're going to find out as we go through this. So, shout out to Victoria, Pam, Earl, Kara, Kevin, Siobhan, Pam, and Aaron. They make the work fun, and it's a lot of work, but it's exciting.
Yeah, our next step is that we will have a checkpoint in a couple of weeks as a task force, and then at the end of November, we are meeting face-to-face in Washington, D.C. to partner up with some national organizations based in Washington to have some conversations around strategy. So I think that will be really exciting to have those meetings. We're having a couple of face-to-face meetings. Most of what we're doing is in this kind of format or through video chats. But it's really helpful to kind of come together as a task force and continue that planning. And Leah is absolutely right. This is all a really incredible team effort, and I'm really appreciative of everybody's hard work.
Thank you to both of you for your leadership and your guidance through this whole process. And as someone who's on the task force, I've learned a great deal, and just appreciative that you are helping move NIRSA in the right direction. So thank you to Leah and Don for all of your hard work. And so as we kind of wrap up today, I kind of wanted just to echo what Leah and Don says to our audience, and that's to stay engaged. I think it's important that we in higher education and collegiate rec stay engaged, and you can do that by following what's going on in this process, because this will impact you, and this will impact kind of what you do in your job. So students, GAs, young professionals, this is the stuff you want to kind of pay attention to in addition to your day-to-day responsibilities. But as someone who's kind of gleaned from involvement in the profession, I would strongly encourage you, kind of like Don and Leah said, to get involved and stay engaged. And so once again, just want to say thank you to Leah and Don for joining us today. And thank you to Rochelle, Max, and Zach for working behind the scenes to ensure that this program gets kicked off as smoothly as it does. Just a reminder that next month, we will be having another YouTube live event with the Small Programs Advisory Council. So our friend Max from Rec Chat will be kind of running point on that. And so we've been working with Christine Haluzik from HQ to work with some of our members to talk about kind of what that program is working on. So if you're a small program, you definitely want to make sure that you tune in to the next November Rec Chat. And so again, feel free to stay engaged through Rec Chat, watch the video, feel free to tweet at us any of the questions, and we'll make sure that it gets to the task force. And so once again, thank you to Leah and Don and to the Rec Chat crew. Have a wonderful day and be well. Thank you very much.